We're going to go back to the Bible and read Daniel 3 and 24.
Daniel 3 and 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God.
Right. So not only are the 3 men that we originally threw into the furnace are not harmed, are not hurt, are not scathed, there seems to be a 4th person or a 4th man within the same furnace, and his likeness is as the Son of God, which shows us what? That the Most High protected them. Okay? The Son of the Most High, who would later come into the earth, is who the world calls Jesus Christ, who we call Yeshua Mashiach, was with them. Okay? Read on.
Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire.
Now you see this. Again, in this situation, as Nebuchadnezzar is deciding to throw them into the fire, these 3 men could have chosen to curse Nebuchadnezzar as he's sending men to bind them, as he's sending them to be cursed or to be judged to the fiery furnace. They could have rebuked Nebuchadnezzar harshly, okay, with foul words and foul speech and all of the things that we would say is justifiable. Okay? But in this case, they didn't do that. They accepted the judgment, and they let him know that, listen, we understand the way of this land. We understood that when we decided not to worship your God, what may befall us, what the punishment may be, and we accepted that. And in the face of this, we're still going to stand with God, and he will deliver us. Okay? So at the end of this, when they're delivered, Nebuchadnezzar looks and says that surely these men are servants of God. So they served, this story served, or their testimony, or this act served as a testimony for Nebuchadnezzar. So that now on the day of judgment, Nebuchadnezzar cannot say that the Most High did not show himself unto him. Nebuchadnezzar cannot say that the Most High was not present in his kingdom. Because there were plenty of servants who Nebuchadnezzar came across, such as Daniel and these 3 holy children, who manifested the work of God before his eyes and served as a testimony that the God of Israel is the true God. Okay? But yet, he decided to serve whatever he decided to serve. Okay? So Nebuchadnezzar has no excuse on the day of judgment. And on the flip side, we have no excuse on the day of judgment. Why? Because as we're reading this story, we see what happens to those who stand boldly for the name of God, who stand boldly for the truth of God, who stand boldly for the commandments of God, even in the face of death. Okay? We see what happens. So now when we stand in these situations, we have no excuse. We can't say, well, it was a gun to my head and they told me to bow down and worship this image. We have no excuse. Okay? We have no excuse to say, well, they told me either I worship this or they're going to put me to death. We have no excuse. We have no excuse. No one can tell us either you forsake God or we're going to do this or we're going to do that. We have no excuse to say, well, just to save my life, I'm going to forsake the Most High and do what they say to preserve my life. We have no excuse. Why? Because we have plenty of examples of those who came before us and showed us the way in which we must respond in regards to our God, even in the face of death. Okay? Read on.
Daniel 3 and 27. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose body the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel, and delivered his servants, and trusted in him, and have changed the king's words, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God.
So their boldness forced Nebuchadnezzar to change the law of his kingdom. Okay? Because everyone went and everyone went with the way of the Babylonians and worshipped the image at the sound of music. That's what kept the farce going. That's what kept the vain custom going. But these men standing boldly against this commandment, okay, in love for their God, eventually forced them to change that commandment to where they were now free to worship their God freely and openly in Babylon. Okay, read on.
Daniel 3:29. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort.
And it got so, Nebuchadnezzar went as far as to say that if you so much as curse the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you curse the God of Israel, then you will be cut to pieces. And your body parts will be spread across a dunghill, because there is no God that can deliver in such a way as the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay? That came from them standing boldly for their God. Okay? Read on.
Verse 30. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon.
And it didn't stop there. Eventually they were promoted in his kingdom, in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, given high positions in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom.